Welcome to the Money Metals Midweek Memo, news and commentary relating to sound money, the precious metals markets, and the economy. I'm your host, Mike Maharrey. Thanks for tuning in. So, as I'm recording this, yet another hurricane is ramping up in the Gulf of Mexico. His name is Milton, and he's not welcome here. But he's like that annoying relative that just kind of shows up on your doorstep. It looks like he's coming to visit us anyway. And man, we're still dealing with the carnage that Aunt Helene left during her recent visit. Now, I probably should note for folks who may not know, I know I've mentioned it on the show before, but I do live in the Tampa Bay area, and we're still trying to recover from Hurricane Helene. She did quite a number on this area, particularly in terms of flooding. And now we're getting braced for Milton. Now, also, you might be a little bit confused because I'm actually recording this podcast ahead of time. It's for next week. I'm planning on going on vacation. We'll see how that works out with the storms and stuff. But as it stands now, I'm supposed to be heading up to Kentucky to see my kids and have some fun. And so I'm trying to get this recorded ahead of time. I wanted to have something for you guys. You're important to me, and I wanted to make sure that you had something to listen to while I was on vacation. So I'm actually pre-recording this particular podcast. So that's why I'm talking about Milton as if he hasn't showed up yet. By the time you actually hear this, Milton will be long gone. But anyway, I didn't want to leave you fine people with nothing to listen to again. So I thought I would try to come up with something that would be evergreen and still make sense in a week or so. So I thought I would use these dumb hurricanes as an opportunity to teach some economics. Economics is generally a pretty boring subject that most people really aren't all that interested in, but it's so important because economics has a tremendous impact on your life. And the way government implements and manipulates economic policy, it has a huge impact on your own personal wealth, on your bank account. And so it is valuable to understand economics. You might not be able to change anything. You might not be able to stop the government policies that are bad and that are stealing your wealth, but at least you'll be aware of them, and it will give you the opportunity to take steps to maybe protect yourself. And, as a friend of mine often says when it comes to learning new things, learning things is good in and of itself, right? We don't want to be ignorant barbarians. So I thought that using the hurricanes to teach economics might at least be an interesting way to talk about a couple of subjects that actually are extremely controversial. So, if you want to upset your friends on Facebook, you can post this episode and say Mike Maharrey thinks price gouging is good, because that's one of the things I'm actually going to get into here. So let's talk about price gouging to start with. And I think it's a good subject because we have a presidential candidate who has vowed to stomp out price gouging in the world of groceries. So probably a good idea to understand, what these kind of policies might do. Now, generally speaking, as a big storm approaches, the governor declares a state of emergency, and I'm talking specifically about Florida. Different states may have slightly different policies, but I think pretty much all states kind of follow this basic blueprint. And so you get the state of emergency, and this wasn't even necessary for Milton because we're already under one thanks to Helene. But when Florida is under a state of emergency, it activates one of the most misguided and counterproductive economic policies imaginable. Nevertheless, it is an extremely popular policy. In fact, when you say it's a bad policy, most people will get very angry with you. And that's because it sounds nice. And I'm talking about the ban on price gouging. This is how the Florida Attorney General describes it. During a storm-related declared state of emergency, state law prohibits excessive increases in the price of essential commodities such as equipment, food, gasoline, hotel rooms, ice, lumber, and water needed as a direct result of the event. Now, if you read that, if you listen to what I said, the first question that comes to mind is, what is excessive? I mean, that's a vague term, right? Excessive is in the eye of the beholder. Is raising the price of a 12-pack of water $1? Is that excessive? $2? $3? I mean, where's the line? I guess it's kind of the way the Supreme Court defined porn. You know it when you see it. But no matter how vague the law might be, the vast majority of people like it. And again, it's because it sounds like a good thing, right? Your benevolent overlords in Tallahassee, or whatever state capital you're talking about, they're there to protect you. They're protecting you from the greedy, nasty, sketchy price gougers. But the reality is, the policy itself is dumb. Or if you want to be a little bit more generous, it's just bad economics. And in the big scheme of things, it is hurting you. It's not helping. It sounds like it's helping, right? You're being protected by the government. As with so many things that the government does, not helping at all. So not too long ago, I wrote about the economic absurdity of Kamala Harris's plan to ban price gouging on groceries. And in that article, and I'll link to it in the show notes, I explained why price controls and these price gouging laws are nothing more than price controls. They always lead to shortages. It's supply and demand economics 101. Price gouging bans during storms are equally absurd from an economic standpoint. But these policies are actually more popular than plans like Kamala rolled out because people figured that during a disaster, the government needs to take some extra steps to protect us from the bad guys. Here's the problem. Economics doesn't care whether there's a disaster or not. Economic principles do what they do, and they don't give two wits about your feelings on the matter. Nevertheless, price gouging bans sound good in theory, and that means they will probably never go away, no matter how harmful they might be in reality. And sometimes I think even trying to talk about this is a waste of my breath and energy because I'm going to get nasty emails from people because, Mike Maharrey doesn't care about people. He thinks price gouging is good. He's probably a price gouger. I got nothing to sell, so I'm not a price gouger, but and I know that no matter how I explain this, no matter how well I frame it, no matter how logical my explanation that you're about to hear might be, most people are just going to roll their eyes and again, make that emotional response that I'm just a bad guy. And I might be a bad guy, but not because of this. So, people have this visceral emotional reaction to people raising prices during a disaster. But this is nothing but feels. In fact, price gouging serves an important economic function. Now, I'd rather not use the term price gouging because that's just a loaded, emotionally packed word that politicians like to use to justify their policy and make you angry and get you to vote for them because they're protecting you. But raising prices in or before a disaster does serve an important economic function. When you do not allow prices to rise, it causes more harm than good. But trying to explain this to the average person is kind of like spitting into the wind. Hurricane pun intended. And I mean, yes, I get it. The idea of some greedy dude profiting from your pain during a storm, yes, it is pretty cringy. And you know what? I don't deny that some price gougers, if we're going to use that term, some of them might be greedy. Some of them might just be out for themselves and they hate you and they're looking at a way to make a buck on your pain. But that does not mean prices shouldn't be allowed to go up during an emergency. And I think it's important to understand it is simultaneously possible to think that raising prices during a storm is kind of sleazy, but also think that the government shouldn't be implementing policies to stop it. So if we try to step out of the emotion and look at this from purely an economic standpoint, so-called price gouging during a disaster is really just a function of supply and demand, right? Prices always rise as demand goes up or supplies drop. And again, it's economics 101, and it doesn't care about how you feel about it. That's just the way it is. And when the government steps in and interferes with the free market pricing system, it will always create all kinds of bad, but generally unseen consequences. And the policy might make you feel better, but when you look at it from a broad perspective, in the big picture, not helping. So let me just kind of give you an analogy that might help kind of makes more sense in your head. And I have to give Tom Woods credit for this because that's where I read it for the first time. But just imagine for a moment that the weatherman is telling you that it's going to rain every single day for 2 months. You might go out and buy an umbrella, right? I mean, you don't want to get your head wet. And most people probably would do that if they didn't already have one. So under these circumstances, you've got all these people going out to buy umbrellas. The prices of umbrellas would probably quickly skyrocket, right? You've got all these people, they all want umbrellas. It's going to rain for 2 months. They're all going to the store. The price of umbrellas would quickly go up. Now, if umbrella prices were forced to remain low, let's say because some knuckle-headed politician passes a law declaring you can't raise the price of an umbrella when the weatherman predicts rain, you might go out and buy a bunch of umbrellas. In fact, you might buy one umbrella for every member of your family. You might even buy a couple of spare umbrellas just in case, right? But if the knuckle-headed politician never passes that law, and prices are allowed to spike in response to the demand, you would probably make do with just one or two umbrellas, right? You wouldn't buy one for every member of your family. You would probably say, you know what? You kids can share. Mom and I will share one, you kids can share one, and they're not going to buy extra umbrellas because they're just too expensive now, right? Now, think about the benefit of this down the line. By leaving some umbrellas unbought by you, you are actually leaving some umbrellas for somebody else. There will be more umbrellas available for more people because you don't have anybody out there, or you won't have as many people hoarding them because it's too expensive, right? It's nice. The rising price would also help boost supply, right? If umbrellas got expensive enough in the area where it's going to rain, some guy in a less rainy locale with lower umbrella demand might be willing to drive in a shipment of bumbershoot's. I mean, it would be worth it for him to pay the transportation costs so he could take advantage of the higher price he could charge in the rainy market. So this increase in supply would likely push prices back down, or at least keep them from rising even higher. And more importantly, you would have more umbrellas available for these people who are about to endure the 2 months of rain. So all of this makes perfect sense, right? From a logical standpoint. Doesn't matter. No matter how much sense it might make, or how well I explain these economics, most people will get angry and start rambling about greed. This is basically an argument I can't win because my feels always trumps economics. Now, of course, these same people will buy a bottle of water for $5 at a baseball game or at the airport. But when you ask them to pay $3 for a bottle of water before a storm, they want to make it a federal crime, literally. Never mind that while people are yelling and screaming about price gouging, there's nothing left to buy. The shelves are empty. I guarantee you right now, if I run up to the grocery store or to Walmart, there will be no bottled water. There will be no soup. There may not be any toilet paper. All of these people are out there right now panic buying stuff, hoarding stuff because there might be a storm. There are no price signals to direct supply and demand. Now, never mind the fact that any sane person who lives in a hurricane-prone area actually prepares for storms ahead of time, and they already have water on hand and all of the stuff that they need, but I guess that's a whole different podcast. Anyway, as I've already said, economic reality doesn't care about your feelings. Nevertheless, most politicians in this world are driven by feelings. Feels are the crown jewel of politics. So we actually cheer for the knuckle-headed politician and gripe when the shelves are empty before a storm. And here's the fundamental problem here. You can see the results of quote-unquote price gouging, right? You see prices go up. You feel the pain of having to pay more when prices go up. So it's easy to finger point at the greedy guy. Now, of course, you may also feel the pain of shortages, right? When you go to Walmart and you see the empty shelves, but virtually nobody understands that the anti-price gouging policy was part of what caused it. These cause and effects are hidden. And that leads me to the second economic lesson that we can learn from hurricanes. First lesson, price gouging laws aren't helpful. If prices were allowed to rise, there would probably be more goods and services available for more people for the reasons already explained. So the second lesson, well, let me preface this first by telling you a little bit about the aftermath of Helene. I'll be honest, I've never seen anything like it. This is the first time I've ever actually been in a disaster area. Now, thankfully, I live on pretty high ground, although my house is actually basically right on a river, but we're kind of on a bluff. So we're in one of the higher areas in this entire county. But if you go basically just a quarter mile from my house, you're just kind of going down a hill. Once you get about a quarter mile from here, it's almost like a war zone. And it's really kind of, it's depressing. I'm not going to lie. You drive down the road and all you see for miles are people's wet, soggy belongings in huge piles on the curb. You know, everybody's had to drag all of their furniture, all of their clothing, everything. It's all wet, moldy, mildewed, and again, in a pile on the curb. So many houses in this area were flooded with 2 to 4 feet of water, and it's bad. And I know a lot of places are worse. I mean, I've seen some of the footage coming out of North Carolina. They've got it even worse up there. But it's horrible. It's hard to, if you're not in a disaster area and you're not seeing it with your own eyes, it's hard to comprehend just how big the scope of a disaster really is, right? But here's the thing. We should be grateful, right? Because all of this disaster relief and repair, it's going to create an economic boom, right? Well, at least according to some silly Keynesian economists. It's stimulative. You know, all you got to do is spend money, and that makes the economy bigger. Now, according to this economic theory, and by economic theory, I mean economic fallacy, vast sums of money that will be spent to repair the damage caused by the hurricane or any natural disaster, it stimulates the economy. I mean, heck, a good war will do the trick as well. In fact, economist, and by economist, I mean political hack, Paul Krugman, once actually suggested that a fake alien invasion would benefit the economy because it would boost government spending. I'm not making this up. Krugman actually said this. Here's the quote. If we discover that, space aliens were planning to attack and we needed a massive buildup to counter this space alien threat, and really inflation and budget deficits took second place to that, the slump would be over in 18 months. He's talking about it in the event of an economic recession. And he went on and he said, and then if we discovered, oops, we made a mistake, there aren't any aliens, we'd be better And then it kind of trails off, but I think he was going to say better off. Yeah. Okay. I mean, look, I'm pretty sure building weapons to fight fake aliens would make my life at least, 45, 50% better. And, I mean, if a fake alien war is good, how about a hurricane? Well, I can answer that. It's not great at all. It's not good. The notion that disasters have some kind of silver lining because there's going to be a lot of spending for repairs, it stems from what is known as the broken window fallacy. Economist Frederick Bastiat first exposed this fallacy in his essay, That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen. And I'll link to this on the show notes page as well if you want to read the essay. It's kind of must read if you want to understand some basic economic principles. But I'm going to sum it up here for you. Imagine that a kid throws a rock through a shop window. So the theory is that this is good for the economy because now the shop owner is going to have to pay somebody to repair the window, right? He's going to have to fork out some bucks to a glass fixer to fix his window. Here's how Bastiat explained it. If you have been present at such a scene, and the scene here is the kid threw the rock through the window, you will most assuredly bear witness to the fact that every one of the spectators, were there even 30 of them, by common consent apparently, offer the unfortunate owner this invariable conclusion. Quote, "It is an ill wind that blows nobody good. Everybody must live, and what would become of the glazier if panes of glass were never broken?" So in other words, what Bastiat is saying is that the shop owner's misfortune is the glass fixer's good luck, because now he's going to earn some money. So with the money that the glazier makes fixing the window, he can now go buy a new suit. And that means the tailor will have new money in his pocket, and he can go to a baseball game. And then the owner of the baseball team benefits because there's another fan in the seats, and maybe the guy goes and buys a beer and a hot dog, and on it goes. So the thinking here is the broken window led to a string of economic transactions, and that's good. As Bastiat put it, this careless child and his rock spurred trade. Now, this seems plausible, right? I mean, on the surface, it does appear as if the broken window led to a small economic boom. We see this trail of spending and buying that resulted from the glazier going to fix the window. But we're missing something. As Bastiat explained, if, on the other hand, you come to the conclusion, as is too often the case, that it is a good thing to break windows, that it causes money to circulate, and that the encouragement of industry in general will be the result of it, you will oblige me to call out, stop there. Your theory is confined to that which is seen. It takes no account of that which is not seen. So it's kind of like the price gouging, right? We see the price gouger, we feel the pain of higher prices, but we don't really see the results of the government forcing prices lower than they otherwise would be. And you always need to account for the unseen when you're making economic calculations. So what have we missed here in our rock throwing episode? Well, we don't see money that was never spent, right? If the shopkeeper hadn't had to spend 6 francs on a new window, he might have taken that money and bought a new pair of shoes. Now that transaction can't happen, and the cobbler won't receive that income. As a result, the cobbler might have to postpone buying a new book for his library. So here's how Bastiat summed it up. He said, let us take a view of industry in general as affected by this circumstance. The window being broken, the glazier's trade is encouraged to the amount of 6 francs. This is that which is seen. If the window had not been broken, the shoemaker's trade or some other would have been encouraged to the amount of 6 francs. This is that which is not seen. So the bottom line here is this whole broken window thing. At best, it's a wash. In fact, I would argue that people are worse off, right? I mean, think about it. Destroying things does not make you better off. If that was true, then I'd go take a sledgehammer to my wife's car. Destruction's good for the economy. Let's blow stuff up. No, I mean, it doesn't really make sense when you sit back and think of it in those terms. So here's the thing. A good economist always tries to account for the unseen. But most people are not good economists. And quite frankly, that includes a lot of economists. I mean, it should be clear that breaking a window does not make society better off overall. And of course, that becomes even more clear when you magnify the destruction to the level produced by a hurricane or a war. I mean, I guarantee you, drive through my neighborhood, look at all of these people who have lost everything. Yeah, they might get insurance money, they might get to rebuild. They're not better off. They would have been better off if the water had never flowed into their homes. Yes, no doubt, billions will be spent to repair and clean up. Roofers, builders, and others are going to make a lot of money. But you have to stop and consider the cost to others. I doubt anybody in Florida, North Carolina, and any other place impacted by Helene is going to claim they're better off because their house is flooded. And just stop and imagine what could have been done with those billions of dollars had the hurricane never materialized. Bottom line, destruction isn't progress. It's just silly. It's Keynesian claptrap. Now, unfortunately, the economics profession is filled with Keynesians and political hacks who owe their professional lives to the political class. They are basically court advisors. They are committed to propping up the regime. Bad economics doesn't benefit you, but it benefits politicians because it is all driven by feelings, right? Nobody wants to reckon with hard economic realities. You're never going to see a campaign commercial that is touting like pure economic principles and realities. And if you ever do see that campaign commercial, that candidate is probably going to lose because it's dry, it's sterile. We run on emotion, right? So these economists spin things in a way that makes people feel better and leads them to believe that the political class has their best interest at heart. It's about votes, not truth. Hard truth does not make a good campaign commercial. Right? You're never going to hear a Fed official admit that their monetary policy is causing price inflation. You're never going to hear a court economist admit minimum wage laws limit employment for the poorest and most unskilled workers. And it's why the political class will never stop borrowing and spending money, at least until the game of kick the can down the road runs out of road, because borrowing and spending allows them to buy votes. So they're not going to deal with the harsh economic realities of debt until they're forced to by a crisis, because it's just not good politics. Good politics and good economics don't necessarily go hand in hand. They should, right? We should be looking for policies that are going to benefit the most. Not the ones that are emotionally appealing, not the ones that are going to benefit some special interest, but the policies that are going to benefit the most people. And that's always the free market. I'm sorry, it's always the free market because, as I've talked about on the show before, these central planners can't know everything. Even if they want to see the unseen, you can't project and predict all of the unseen consequences of any given economic policy. It's much better to allow the free market, which is merely millions of individuals interacting with one another freely. That's a much better way to allocate scarce resources than allowing some people with power to do it. So that's the reality we live in. And I've been on this planet long enough to realize that, it's kind of pointless to butt your head against the reality, right? I'm not going to change it. I did this podcast. I explained this to the best of my knowledge. Some of you are going to say, oh, that's great. I really appreciate that Mike explained that. Most people will never hear it. And some people that do hear it are just mad. So what do we do? Well, all of this, what it really does is it shows you that you have to take care of your own financial house. You have to take steps to protect yourself from the unseen consequences of government policies. They're not going to do it for you because they're the ones creating the bad policies to begin with. You have to take control of your own life and do the best you can to minimize the impact of this stuff on your own life, on your own wealth. And one way you can do that is to hold on to real money, gold, and silver. Because the government can't print gold. It can't print silver. It can't create inflation with gold and silver. It's real money. So that's why I keep saying now is a great time to call 800-800-1865 and talk to a Money Metals precious metals specialist. And these folks are great. They can help you figure out how gold and silver or other precious metals can fit into your investment strategy, how they can protect your wealth, how they can shield you from some of these unseen consequences that the government is foisting on us day to day. So give them a call today and talk to them. If you don't want to talk on the phone, go to moneymetals.com and you can chat right online with a precious metal specialist. And, again, if I say this every week, but if you don't want to talk to anybody, you know what you want. You want to get some American Gold Eagles or some silver bars, you can buy directly from our website, have it shipped to you, or you can actually store it in our brand new state-of-the-art vaulting facility in Idaho. It's the Fort Knox of the West. It's pretty awesome. So make that phone call today, 800-800-1865. And with that, that's a wrap of this episode of the Money Metals Midweek Memo. You can get more information about the things that I've talked about on the show and more over at moneymetals.com/news. And, if you want to get the latest news and information relating to gold and silver right in your email box, make sure you sign up and get on our email list. You can subscribe to the Midweek Memo podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. And when you do, you'll be able to also tune into our Market Wrap podcast that airs every Friday, where you'll get a quick overview of the week in precious metals, along with conversations between yours truly and a lot of really interesting people out there in the world of gold and silver, economics, and investing. As always, thank you so much for taking time to listen to the show, spending a little bit of time with me. I very much appreciate it. And thanks. And I will be right back here next week to talk to you again.